Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Friday the 11th of March 2022, and we're looking at a subject which we cover briefly in our news updates, but frankly is an area of considerable concern and potentially significantly impactful on the global economy and precious metal prices. Yes, we're talking geopolitics and the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Let's take a look. Now, before we look at Putin et al., just a quick shout out to a video we published quite late yesterday evening entitled Gold and Silver's Meteoric Rise Stalled by an Interview and CPI Figures Today, where we talk about the rise and then sudden dip in precious metal prices and the reasons behind the fall. And we've placed a link to this video below. Now, at the time of writing this video that we're producing now, gold currently stands at $1,990, some $50 below its week's high, and silver stands at $25.84, some $1.12 below its week's high. Now, naturally, by the time it's published, these figures may very well have changed. Now, we mentioned yesterday that we're not expecting a rise to the previous week's high this week, but we are most certainly not ruling out the potential in the weeks to come. Why? Because it appears to us that regardless of what the president of the Ukraine wishes to happen, and his interview which caused the dip, it now appears that Putin is on a path from which he simply cannot deviate and politically survive. One of the first things that one is taught in military intelligence is to understand the psychology of your enemy. And we have to just briefly look at Putin's history to realize that as a child, he was a short but rather aggressive and determined young man, and believed that one should never show weakness. He was born in Leningrad, now called St. Petersburg, and studied law at Leningrad State University, graduating in 1975. He worked as a KGB foreign intelligence officer for 16 years, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel, before resigning in 1991 to begin a political career in St. Petersburg. He was never really regarded as inspiring, certainly not initially, but was conscientious and surprising to many, was recommended to the post of Prime Minister by then President Boris Yeltsin, who finally recommended him as his successor to the presidency. In that role as Prime Minister, he did inspire the public. His determination and ruthlessness to attain the top job, in spite of many critics and opponents, and his dictatorial grasp on the position since, reveals a character trait that will not accept defeat. In fact, he is often quoted as telling the story of the trapped rat that he embarked upon doing, finding out that the rat attacked him when cornered. It is because of this, it is crucially important to understand that it's extremely unlikely that Putin will leave the Ukraine before his objectives are met. This does not bode well for the West, the global economy, or geopolitical stabilization. This is why so many senior military and intelligence officials are publicly proclaiming that Putin must be given a way out, without it appearing as defeat, as they fear that otherwise hostilities will simply escalate, and potentially nothing then is off the table in terms of warfare. Let's just take a quick look at two articles published in the last 24 hours. BBC News article published yesterday by Gordon Carrera. Russia could launch chemical attack in Ukraine. White House. Russia could be planning a chemical or biological weapon attack in Ukraine. And, quote, we should all be on the lookout, unquote, the White House has said. Press Secretary Psaki said Russia's claims about US biological weapon labs and chemical weapon development in Ukraine were preposterous. She called the false claims an obvious ploy to try to justify further premeditated and provoked attacks. It comes after Western officials shared similar concerns about fresh attacks. They said They were very concerned about the risk the war could escalate, and particularly the possibility of Russia using non-conventional weapons. The most likely refers to chemical weapons, although the term also covers tactical small-scale nuclear weapons, biological weapons and dirty bombs. "We've got good reason to be concerned," said one Western official. They said this was partly because of what has been seen in other places where Russia has been engaged, notably Syria, where chemical weapons were used by its allies. Ms. Psaki said, "We should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, or to create a false flag operation using them. It's a clear pattern." If we now have a quick look at Bloomberg, tech walls off Russia like never before, posing new risks for the United States. The campaign to starve Russia of technology, stripping the nation of everything from iPhones and Airbnb listings to defense electronics, is an unprecedented experiment that risks pushing Vladimir Putin further into China's orbit. Using export controls as a tool, the United States is leading an effort to deprive Russia of components it needs for high-end industry and advanced weapons, with the hopes of ensuring that President Putin feels the pain of his decision to invade Ukraine. That has forced makers of computers, chips and sensors to halt shipments to Russia. At the same time, many of the biggest US companies have gone further, effectively establishing a tech boycott of the nation. The idea encouraged by Ukrainian leaders is that depriving Russians of access to tech and digital platforms will spur popular protest and undermine Putin's military campaign. But no one has attempted modern technological isolation on this scale before, and it's hard to say how Russia's 145 million people will ultimately respond. Okay, so it's difficult to disagree with the comments contained in these articles, and whatever one may think of the Biden White House, regardless of one's political preferences, they were correct in predicting Putin's imminent invasion, and we have no reason to disbelieve their concerns over chemical weapons. So what does this mean for gold and silver? Well, unless peace is agreed or a deal cut between the Ukraine and Russia, which, as each day passes, seems very unlikely, the high for gold and silver may not yet be in. Yes, they are going to be hit by rising interest rates, for sure, but geopolitics, at least short term, could have a more impactful effect. No one really knows how this situation is going to end, but until it does, there is a tailwind behind precious metals. If it does end satisfactorily, without too much fallout, then expect quite a reasonable fall in prices, where the environment for gold and silver will then be looked at in terms of inflation versus interest rates. We, however, can only foresee further escalation right now, which should keep prices, and especially gold prices, supported. What do you think? Do share your thoughts. Meanwhile, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already done so, do subscribe to our channel and press the bell sign so you're notified of our videos as and when they're published. And a quick reminder that tomorrow we shall be producing our gold and silver weekly update. Until then, have a great day. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.